All right, this is another common question I get. Should I join an agency as a freelancer? Whether you are feeling the pain of chasing clients and finding work, or you're just getting started with taking that freelancing plunge, welcome to our humble freelancing abode. My 5 years as a freelancer. I worked with over 40 clients and I was part of, I would say, 2 or 3 agencies, and I helped manage a 6-figure agency as well. I thought I could share my experience working with agencies, what I liked, what I didn't like, and some ups and downs, but obviously know that there's no one size fit all, so take in all the information you can and make the choice that's right for you. But let's chat about agencies and the decision of whether to join an agency when you are working as a freelancer. Hey, my name is Dea, freelancer, digital business manager, and most recently, entrepreneur. And as always, you can find sections on the play bar below if you want to skip to a certain part of the video. Your time is precious, so take what you need, and if you want to watch this on 2x, I will not be offended in the least. Okay, let's dive into the video. So, freelancing, I'm sure most of you know the gist by now, but just so we are on the same page, a freelancer is essentially someone who is self-employed and provides services to a handful of businesses, often at the same time. An agency, meanwhile, is a business that recruits freelancers or contractors in a given field and then finds work for them for a cut. It's common for agencies to have working relationships with existing companies, so that might mean that you as the freelancer may never speak to the client directly. Typically, the agency plays the part of that middleman for both employment and communication. And I would say there are, broadly speaking, 2 different types of agencies that are relatively common that I've seen. So the first type is an agency where everyone is within the same field roughly. And the second type is an agency where everyone specializes in different things and come together to deliver one type of project. So as an example for type 1, a freelance graphic designer is one person with their one skill set, right? And they might have 2 to 3 clients at a time that they're helping. A graphic design agency, however, a type 1 agency, normally has lots of freelance graphic designers, all within the same field of graphic design on the team, probably a broader set of services and packages they're able to offer under the graphic design umbrella, and they're able to help more clients at the same time. Because they are an agency, they have more manpower, they're able to handle more workload, basically. An example for the second type of agency is, for example, the agency that I was managing a few years ago. It was a course creation agency. So on our team, we had a curriculum designer with teaching experience, copywriter, a video editor, a bookkeeper, a virtual assistant, a web developer, a graphic designer, and me, the digital business manager. So people with completely different skill sets coming together to deliver the holistic package of creating an online course for somebody. So if a client wanted to make an online course, instead of having to individually source a bunch of different freelancers for each of the things that they needed, right, for copy, for design, for setup, and having to make all the freelancers talk to each other and work cohesively, a client could just hire our one agency and know that it would all get done by us. So an agency is, whether it's type 1 or type 2, is just normally able to offer more services and more variety, even within the same field, just because they have more skill sets and talent at their disposal. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for clients if they are doing their job right. So, do you venture out alone, or do you join a band of fellow freelancers? To compare the pros and cons, I thought we could break it down into 4 categories: time, money, professional development, and stress levels. So first category, time. If you are a freelancer, then you need to be out there drumming up sales. So whatever method you choose, whether that is using Facebook groups, cold pitching, using freelancing platforms, using Instagram, creating a client funnel, attending networking events, doesn't matter. You just have to be doing something. And that means time. Time sat down on your computer, sending messages, posting stories, getting your services out there. I would estimate personally, this is just for me, that in the first few months of starting freelancing, I spent about 60 to 80% of my total freelancing time looking for clients. So applying, interviewing, pitching, discovering calls, all of that stuff, trying to land the client, not even doing client work yet. Of course, depending on the type of service you offer and whether your services are more long-term services, the level of sales activity may decrease over time as you get booked out and you no longer have availability, right? So for example, in my case, as a freelance digital business manager, my services like project and team management are things that business owners really need on an ongoing basis, not really on a one-off basis. So over time, I slowly became booked out with long-term retainer clients. I was handling multiple at the same time. And because my time was being booked out, I didn't need to do nearly as much sales after the first 6 to 12 months. So after a few months, I think the 60 to 80% I was spending on sales turned slowly to 40% of my freelance time, to 30%, then 20% of my total time being used for sales activity. So that's just to give you a bit of perspective on, the initial sales activity will probably have to be higher. But depending on your services, it might lower over time. But either way, as a freelancer, you are the person responsible for finding and landing clients. So managing your schedule, finding leads, and chasing clients for pay are all of those responsibilities come down to you. Clients are not going to magically show up in the beginning. A few may magically show up after you've established yourself a little bit and word of your incredible talent has spread. But in the beginning, it's really down to you. And that's the biggest difference. An agency, meanwhile, they take the time, they go out and they find clients for you, which of course can save you time. Time that you don't have to spend on sales activity, on finding and landing those clients. And for those of you that are trying to get off the ground, that time saver could be the momentum you need to get going. And even outside of client acquisition, agencies can also focus on other things that might be very time consuming, like admin stuff, scheduling, deadlines, chasing payments if clients don't pay. So consider all of those things when you're thinking about your time allocation and whether you have that time to dedicate to sales and marketing in the beginning as a freelancer. The second factor to consider is professional development. So learning and growth, because that is, you guys know if you've been watching me for a while, then you know that that is one of the biggest reasons I was able to scale as a freelancer. It's what I recommend to everybody. If you can prioritize learning and professional development in the roles that you are signing. And I will say, whether you join an agency or you stay a freelancer, you will develop one way or another. But in my own personal experience at an agency, I was able to work with larger scale clients than I did on my own as a freelancer. I have an inkling, this is just a gut feeling, that sometimes larger clients prefer to work with agencies because agencies are that one-stop shop. And so they know that they've got it all handled, and it will some of the times be a more holistic service that they can offer versus hiring individual freelancers, because then really you're building your own team and you have to manage all these people instead of with an agency where you know they're managing all their people. So when I was working as part of an agency, I worked with some really top tier, almost like online business celebrities, and it was really interesting for me to see behind the curtains of their businesses, especially as a digital business manager. I think sometimes as self-taught people, Google people, it can sometimes feel like, oh, am I missing something? Like big businesses know something that I don't know. And like, yeah, there are definitely things that we can learn from them on their processes and larger team structures, but it also really allowed me to see, more importantly, that there's truly nothing magical or secret going on in the operations of these mega online businesses. There's nothing that we're missing. We're doing everything right. So I think that developed me a lot professionally through experience, but also more importantly, confidence. So I really appreciate that this one agency I worked with allowed me access to higher tier clients. So that might be something to consider is, can an agency push you further in terms of your experience working with higher tier clients and maybe the confidence that will come alongside that, that you can then take that experience and go off on your own as a freelancer. The third category, this is kind of the big one, money. So as freelancers, we don't have to share our money with anyone other than the government. So that $50 for an hour's worth of work means you get $50 before tax, of course, whereas an agency takes a cut of what you earn. So one agency I was in a few years back, I charged them $35 an hour, and I know they charged the end client $50 an hour for my time. So that's about 30% of the pay that went to the agency. What the agency makes in profit off of me and my work goes then to pay for the agency expenses, for finding, landing clients, for marketing and sales, for accounting, for account managers to manage the clients, to communicate properly, etc., etc. So that's kind of the trade-off to think about there, is that they're taking a cut of your pay to save you time in certain things that you essentially are saying that you would prefer not to do, like marketing, sales, admin, that kind of stuff. The percentages will vary from agency to agency. In my experience, I've seen anywhere from 15% to 50%, but it's also important to keep in mind that agencies can and will often charge much higher price points than an individual freelancer. So it is possible that you're giving them a rate that you're happy with. Like when I gave them $35 an hour, I was happy with that rate, and they went to charge the client $50 an hour, which is a much higher rate, because they could, right? And I was happy with the $35 an hour, and it didn't bother me that they were charging a little bit more to help me find cool clients and help me get access to higher tier clients. So that's kind of what I call a win-win. It's just something to keep in mind and to be aware of, is what is that trade-off for you? So if you do consider joining an agency, I would say most importantly, above all else, just make sure you're being paid what you find fair for the trade-off you're getting from the agency. All right, the final one is stress. Let's talk about stress, because this is a huge factor for me, and I didn't factor this in. I did not factor this factor in the beginning, because I was like, whatever, I can handle the stress. I'll just take on stuff. It's fine if it's super stressful. It's fine if it's high pressure. It's fine if everything's an emergency. I'll handle it. But as I kept freelancing, I felt as my energy was being drained more and more overall, and I was being bad at recharging my energy, I realized that stress was costing me so much money and time, because it kept me from the clients that I should have been focusing on. Because sometimes your like stressful clients take up more bandwidth than everybody else combined, right? So I think stress is a really important factor to think about. And oftentimes with agencies, you as the freelancer will not have direct contact with the end client. There will be a point of contact that all communication flows through to streamline and keep things simple for the end client, so the end client doesn't have to talk to 15 different people on the agency team. So as an example, when I was managing the course creation agency, I was that point of contact with clients, which meant the freelancers on the team didn't have to communicate with those external clients. This, depending on the client, can be an advantage for you as the freelancer. That is the nicest way I will say it. I will be upfront and say that when there was a nightmare client, it was extremely nice for our freelancers not to have to be in direct contact with the nightmare client. It definitely made the projects less stressful for them to have that account manager filter the information for them and give it to them in a more clear and precise and non-emotional way. Sometimes really took the stress off of our team members. Like, I could tell I was kind of taking on the stress, and I was kind of like protecting them from the stress of the end client, saying all these things, sending voice messages and all that stuff. And that's actually why I was also open to joining an agency as a freelancer later, because I knew I wouldn't have to deal with the end clients. I could just kind of talk to my point of contact, and if my point of contact was somebody who was kind, respectful, who was a good organizer, who was a good account manager and really knew how to work with me well, then I could feel pretty safe knowing that no matter who is on the other end, no matter what kind of end client they're signing, it'll be fine, because I would just have my point of contact. So that's something to keep in mind, is if you are fussed with the stress of having to deal with so many different types of personalities, different types of client working style and all that stuff, an agency can sometimes be a good way to protect yourself and put a buffer in place so that you don't have to manage all of these different types of personalities. Now, of course, there are ways to mitigate that, and I might make a video on that in the future, is like, how do I filter out bad clients? Like, I have a very strict process now, filters on filters on filters. After years, I've developed it, I've honed it, and that is how I know that the client I sign is going to be a good person. But that's a talk for another day. So, should you join an agency as a freelancer? I would say, if as a freelancer you're already finding reliable, awesome, long-term clients, or you're just getting started with looking for clients, then stick with it, keep going. You do not need an agency taking a cut of your pay that early on, especially because your rate is probably much lower in the beginning, so you don't really want to give up any of that pay in the beginning. If you are, however, struggling a lot with landing clients and have been at it for months with no real like traction or momentum, if you're kind of over the whole process, or if you're looking to kind of kick things off a little bit faster and get your foot in the door with experience with working with clients and getting kind of a peek behind how everything works together and processes, it doesn't hurt to join an agency to spark the match and learn from behind the scenes. You can always quit at the end of the day. It's not like you're committing or anything like that. So that's what I would recommend. I'm really grateful that I did join the agencies that I did. I'm really grateful that I got to manage an agency as well and see how that all worked together. But at the end of the day, most of my client work was freelance for a reason. Either way, this is just the most important part. Always just make sure that you're happy with whatever you're trading for your time and skill set, whether that is money, learning, opportunities, growth. Make sure it's fair to you and your current phase of freelancing, okay? So every phase of freelancing, you might have different priorities, and that's really important. It's really important to have different priorities in different phases of freelancing so that you're prioritizing the right things to be able to advance to the next phase. Like in the beginning, when I was just getting started, I was prioritizing learning and growth and networking much more than later, where I started to value the money and also saving my time and energy. So that's really important to consider, is like, what phase of freelancing am I in? What are my priorities right now? And just make sure that whatever you're doing is fair to that growth. If you have joined an agency before, let us know how you found it in the sharing comment circle below so we can all learn from you. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!